Show of hands, who's first time at CannaGather? Awesome, welcome. Round of applause for all of you. Thank you so much for coming out. And who's been here before? I've been here once or twice. We got a full sign there. There we go. Thanks, Gil. I told you it'd come in handy. There we go. So show of hands, who here is an entrepreneur in the industry or looking to break into the industry? Entrepreneurs. Very cool. Show of hands, who's an investor in the industry? Great. So as you can see from this made-up chart, we got entrepreneurs, we got investors, we got service providers, we got healthcare professionals, we have journalists, we have politicians. It's a pretty eclectic mix, largely concentrated, as I'm sort of alluding to, not based in data, but based on 5 years of doing this, it's mostly entrepreneurs, operators, and people that are either in the industry or want to break into the industry in some form, followed closely by investors.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yve. I'm one of the event... Can I have people's attention, please? Thank you. My name is Yve. I'm one of the event coordinators here at Galvanize. You'll see everyone that is event coordinator wearing one of these shirts. First of all, we want to welcome you here if this is your first time, and welcome you back. We haven't seen you in about 2 months, so glad to have you here again. So I'm just here to let you know what Galvanize is. We're pretty much like a triple threat. First, we are a school. Tech school. We do web development, coding classes. We have our hack reactors. We have an immersive program for women here. We're also a co-working space. We about have 50 companies. In the other room where you guys are at, you can see our neighborhood wall with all the companies that we have here. We also are a place that does events like such. We also do memberships as well. Now, if you have any questions in regards to what we do here, you want it in detail and full, you can ask one of us to have a Galvanized shirt. I hope you guys enjoy your time here. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. So we've been here for about 2.5 years almost, but as you know, if you were here last month, we had Bruce Linton, the founder of Canopy Growth. We were in Flatiron. We had about 370 people. So thank you to everyone who came out for that one. That was pretty incredible. It was our 5-year anniversary to the day. So that was very cool. And if you missed it, all the videos for all of our past events are available on CannaGather.com. So be sure to check that out. As you may know, the host committee, it's you bring a couple of your friends. You get a sweet bag courtesy of your CBD oils and Smoke Cartel. And you get a shout out from me. So Randolph Anto, John Andreatis, Mallory Rossi, Robert Rada, and Robert Rada again. So thank you, Robert. As you can tell, if you buy 2 host committee tickets, you get a smiley face next to your name. So now you know who got the smiley face. Special shout out to the CannaGather New York team. You've probably met many of them throughout the night already or know them through your work in the cannabis industry and community. So just want to give a quick round of applause to all of them, without whom this definitely would not be possible. So thank you, everyone on the team. So before we get started, a couple points. As you may know, if you've been here before, after party across the street at Adore Olay. We got free pizzas, discounted drinks. We didn't do name tags tonight, but June tickets are now available. It'll be June 18th. Speaker will be announced early next week, but early bird tickets will be available until we make that announcement. So be sure to check it out. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. If you want to give me money, send me an email. I will take your money probably. Bloom Farms, obviously. I want to give a shout out to Sally. Thank you, Sally. We will hear more from her later. Very excited to get her up on stage. True Terpenes, really exciting company based out of Washington and flew out to hang with us, so thank you. Cole Schotz, longtime partner. I want to call them up on stage. Who's it going to be this month? Cole Schotz. There, we got someone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Arnold. For those of you who have not yet met, I'm with Cole Schotz. We're a law firm primarily based in Hackensack, but we have offices all up and down the East Coast, as far west as Texas, about 170 plus attorneys. We've been in this industry since probably about 2012. And just recently, we started, a couple of years ago, started a cannabis-specific group. And like just mentioned, we've been a sponsor of this event many times, and we plan to do it in the future. We find these events great because of this networking aspect of it right here. We all have an opportunity to meet someone in some sector in this industry that we may need at some point down the line. We may be able to give business to them or refer something to someone else that we know. And if you're not leaving here with business cards and speaking to as many people as you can, you're doing it wrong. So please come stop by, see me, any of my colleagues. We're happy to help any way we can. And if we don't know an answer, we'll refer it to one of our attorneys in our office. Thank you and enjoy the evening.
Thank you. Arcview. Deborah? Arcview will come back in a bit. Smoke Cartel. Who's coming up, Colin? There we go. Smoke Cartel. Thank you.
How you guys doing tonight? Cool. So I'm Colin Reaves, Operations Manager of Smoke Cartel. We were founded in 2013 by two young college students with $600 selling bongs out of the back of their trunk. Fast forward to now, we're a multi-million-dollar company trading on the OTCQB market under the symbol SMKC. We are a technology-based company who specializes in e-commerce cannabis accessories. We also are venturing into starting our own software, which we've actually created our own in-house ERP system, as well as a e-commerce software suite that is now called Data Den that is now live on Shopify partners. So in addition to all of this, we have 6 in-house brands, as well as 18 sales channels, which includes retail, wholesale, drop shipping, and CBD. Please come by the table if you have any other questions. Until then, enjoy the rest of your guys' night.
Thanks, man. All the way from Georgia. Thank you. Arcview. Deborah. It's talus, foot, ankle?
I apologize. I'm moving a little slower. My name is Deborah Johnson, and I'm with the Arcview group. I was training for a half iron in March, and an F-150 took a right and ran over me and shattered my ankle. So grateful to be here, thankful for my life, and appreciate the opportunity to share with you about Arcview. So the Arcview group is an investor group. We're based out of Oakland, California, been around since 2010, and our investors are looking for early stage deal flow in the cannabis industry, either touching or not touching, anywhere from a safe note and a $250K through a $40 million Series B. So we love to both talk to investors who want to learn more about this industry. We're all about education and data and helping you make informed investment decisions. And we also love talking to you entrepreneurs who are interested in raising funds and want to build their cap table with smart money, not just cash. So we have an upcoming forum coming up in Chicago in July. I'd love to see any of you for either one of those aspects. And of course, we'll be here in New York in the beginning of October. So looking forward to that. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Again, my name is Deborah Johnson with the Arcview Group, and I thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. One day I aspire to consider training for a half iron or a 5K. Some important news that's been going on, as you may have seen from my sporadic email updates and no email updates last week. I've been traveling a little bit to Albany and DC in particular. There have been some media articles about how the MRTA, which is the leading bill for cannabis adult use legalization, is dead. That is not the case. It is not necessarily likely to pass. There's still work that needs to be done to get it there, but it is by no means dead in the water. So if you're interested in getting involved, I'll be going to Albany tomorrow, and DPA, by way of the Start Smart Coalition, will be providing free transportation bright and early at 7 a.m. tomorrow from Union Square. So if you're interested, then definitely let me know. Question? I think festivities kick off around 11 or 12. I can send you the schedule, but yeah, we can hang. And then in DC, last week was the National Cannabis Industry Association's lobby days. So basically about 300 people converging on DC from around the industry and around the country. It was really educational for me in particular. Happy to share some materials if of interest. In particular, the focus was on the Safe Banking Act. So basically it was about banking, unsurprisingly. So it seems like things are looking good in the House, but obviously it all hinges on if and when it does pass in the House, which it seems likely, whether Mitch McConnell would like to bring it to a vote. So we'll all collectively cross our fingers and write our legislators in the Deep South to encourage them to do so. Joke is obviously we're not in the Deep South, but if you know anyone who is in the Deep South, tell them to message their senators. But in the meantime, definitely get up to speed on the latest and greatest issues, particularly the Safe Banking Act. And if you're interested in getting involved in that and more, let me know. 280E, obviously important tax implications for cannabis businesses that effectively get double taxed. That's something that's probably a step after the Safe Banking Act. Actually, the SAFE should be capitals. It's an acronym. But yeah, lots of interesting pieces of legislation. If you're interested, let me know. Aurora just did a deal with the UFC. They'll probably have more information on that in a couple of months. But always good to see that, you know, dangerous sports, one might argue, are getting, and the athletes that participate in those are getting the necessary protection. And then along those lines, the NFL and the NFLPA seem to be making headway on that front. And we have Marvin Washington here, who might be an expert on that, as you may know, because he is the expert on that. So very exciting news, and hopefully he'll have more to share over the next couple of weeks. Last but not least, the FDA is doing a historic hearing, public hearing in Maryland on Friday for CBD. What's going to come of that, we'll find out. But it's pretty cool that they're listening, and hopefully things start moving. If you have any questions on those, definitely let me know. Happy to put you in touch with people that know a lot more about those than I do. Want to bring up Wilson Elser, another longtime sponsor. So who from Wilson Elser? Do we got Ross? Ross here? No, that's Chris. Hi, Chris. PKF O'Connor Davies. We got Noam. Noam's coming up. Noam, welcome to the CannaGather party. Thank you for your support. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks, Josh. I'm super excited. This is our first time sponsoring this event, and we're going to be sponsoring several events, the next, I think, 6 events. We are PKF O'Connor Davies. We are an accounting firm. We work, I'm head of the cannabis practice. We work with cultivators. We work with lifestyle brands. We work with some of the MSOs. We have 800 people. We have, I think, 7 or 8 offices in New Jersey. Please, we have a table over there. Please, if you have any questions on tax or auditing or valuation, that's my particular expertise. Please come and talk to me. I'd love to work with any of you here. Thanks.
Thank you. Is it still really hot in here? No? Is it okay? It's just me? Okay, cool. David, come on up. It's hot. It's still hot back there, though. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Hi, David Lallouz and my partner, James Rieger. We're the face of the cannabis practice at Tannenbaum Helpern. We're a full-service business law firm based in New York City. We've been practicing in the industry for several years now. We really got into it when some of our private equity and venture capital fund clients decided to invest in the space. So we came along with them into the industry, and it's turned into a full-service practice in and of itself. Everything from investment funds to publicly traded companies, multi-state operators, entrepreneurs, and investors. So we can help just about anybody in the industry from just about any perspective.
And I'll just add that David did a great job. I'll just add our private fund clients have a collective of about $1 billion invested in the industry, which not a lot of people can say from a lawyer perspective. And if anybody's going to be at Javits in the next few days, I'll be speaking at on Friday at 10 o'clock on venture capital and private investment funds in the cannabis space as part of a panel.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Wilson Elser. How are you, sir?
to see you. Hey everyone, my name is Neil Willner. I'm an attorney with Wilson Elser. We are a large firm, about 800 attorneys across the country. We have 35 offices and a national cannabis practice as well. About 70 attorneys in our cannabis practice, active in 13 or so of our offices. The co-chairs of our cannabis group have been in the space for almost 10 years now, so we've got a lot of excellent experience we'd like to share with everybody here. As I'm sure you've heard before, legal advice, accounting advice is critical to this industry. We are all in this together. The industry has the largest microscope to it that possibly be imagined. So one screw up by somebody is a screw up for the entire industry. So please reach out to your attorneys, your accountants, make sure all your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, everything's buttoned up nicely. We're here to help you. If you have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to ask. Like I've said at the last couple of events, I love talking about this stuff, about cannabis. The majority of my day is comprised of reading updates on what's going on across the states on CBD, hemp, new cannabis legislation, a lot of stuff going on in New York right now too. So the more I talk to everybody here, the less I annoy my wife. So please give me a call. I'm happy to help out and talk and meet some new people.
Thank you, sir. Cool. So is David in the house? David from True Terpenes. Is he? Oh, there he is. Cool. Thought I saw you. David from True Terpenes.
Thank you.
Hello.
Should I just sit down or?
So I guess I know what True Terpenes is, but everyone else in the audience may not. So do you want to give a brief overview of what True Terpenes is?
Definitely. I guess we'll start there. So I'm not sure what everyone's background is, but you've all smelled cannabis, I'm sure, whether you intended to or not. Notice that slightly skunky smell, aroma. That's the compound myrcene. It's also why beers like IPAs have the taste and smell that they do. It's because that compound is also primarily found in hops. There's also beta-caryophyllene, which is found in clove. And so what we do is we actually source the isolated compounds, known as terpenes, from plants that aren't cannabis, and then we use those to replicate the profile of the plant without using any cannabis. That way you don't have to have any of these legal hangups that you do. So you can bring the scent and taste of cannabis and effects to cosmetics or to food or beer without having to worry about interference from the FDA or DEA.
And so what is your role within True Terpenes, and how did you end up there?
Well, that's a long story, but basically...
Well, that's why we're
here. So I'm the chief science officer, and I have I guess to start with, I've been a medical patient since 2003. I'm originally from California, and so that combined with a background in biology as well as engineering led to where I am now, and I believe that there's just been a lack of people with a science background or in other fields like that in the cannabis space until recently, and I think there's a few people like myself who've had a personal use of the plant, and then that is why I initially came to it, but it wasn't an easy place. I've lost jobs because I was active in cannabis activism, for example, so I think there's still a lot of threat to that to people, so that's why it's keeping some people from the space.
Got it. And did you have some prepared remarks as well?
I wasn't quite sure what it would end up looking like, so I have like about 8 minutes kind of. You mentioned the FDA. Oh, apologies. We're actually going to be testifying at the FDA on Friday.
Amazing. Yeah, I think maybe some additional context for people in the room would be very...
Yeah, do you mind if I just kind of go into the speech at all? Or
go for it.
Kind of just an overview?
Yeah.
Well, today is kind of, I think, supposed to be on brands, but I think one of the primarily strengths of True Terpenes is that our brand is, again, focusing on compliance, regulations. Our brand focuses on compliance and regulations, and so while we're providing terpenes for companies in the cannabis space or in food and beverage, that the importance is that these compounds are going to be allowed to be used in their products, because pesticides, solvents, all those are regulated by different amounts in different states. And so is what you're using to flavor your drink in the cannabis space or the beverage space actually legal to be used for that use? And we are actually registered with the FDA as a food facility, so that way you can be sure that that is. And so on that note, I kind of just wanted to give everyone a background on where we stand federally and in the states, and why, for example, New York City is cracking down on CBD and food. because I think that's just something we're all curious about, because if it's the Farm Bill legalizes it, then why are we having these issues we have? Why are people being arrested at Disneyland for having CBD? I think that's a big problem we're having now, and that people don't realize what was legalized and what wasn't legalized by the Farm Bill.
People are being arrested at Disneyland for CBD?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Oh, wow.
They ended up dropping the charges, but technically she was breaking the law, because the state of Florida didn't actually have regulations outside of medical for CBD. So technically in that state, it wasn't legal to possess. So technically she was possessing a cannabis extract, which was illegal under their law. So while the federal government is making moves, there's still a lot of states that haven't caught up. So I guess to give some ground rules, hemp is cannabis that has less than 0.3% THC, and that's what the Farm Bill touched on. Federally, cannabis that has more than 0.3% THC that isn't cultivated by someone who regulates it or licensed, it's not technically hemp. And so that's still technically illegal. And that's basically one of the reasons why things like the States Act at the federal level are important, so that way we can protect states' rights as well as cannabis rights. The spending bill currently doesn't allow the federal government to go after medical cannabis, but recreational is still not protected. But now let's get back to the Farm Bill, because I think that's what most people are curious about right now. So the Farm Bill removed hemp from the Controlled Substance Act, and it actually legalized possession, cultivation, processing, and it also allows crop insurance and access to USDA grants and water. However, the bill actually also directly states that nothing in the Farm Bill overrides the authority of the FDA or the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And due to that, that then basically means that anything that we use from the plant must be approved by the FDA. And further, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act also includes the protections that if an item is approved as a drug before it's used in food, then it can never be used as a food. Because why, as a pharmaceutical industry, why would you develop a drug like Epidiolex and get it approved if anyone could then put that ingredient into food? Why would you develop that drug? So because of that, the FDA has a law in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act that does not allow that. The same thing exists for supplements. So currently, that's why CBD is not allowed in food. And that's what this hearing is about coming up, is to try and go over some of those things. But currently, that's not legal. Further, hemp terpenes, the molecules I was talking about earlier that we source, but from plants that aren't cannabis, many people believe that hemp terpenes are legal. However, they're only legal to possess or extract. They're not legal to be used in food. You might hear hemp terpene gin or beer that has CBD and terpenes in it. The TTB actually put out a statement on this recently, and it's completely not legal to be done, because until something has generally regarded as safe or food additive status, it's not legal. And under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, it clearly states that any new plant or any new plant part must be approved by the FDA for generally regarded as safe or food additive status. So because of that, currently none of these things are actually legal to be done. People believe that in-state use will be allowed. However, because of the supremacy clause in the Constitution in cases revolving that, it won't be, because, for example, California tried to have medical marijuana and say that because their state had that law, it was the Rohrabacher case went to the Supreme Court, and that was overruled, because basically what our government has ruled in the past is that even if you produce something at home, you are then impacting the market in another state because you're not purchasing it, and that gives them the authority to regulate it at the federal level. So even in-state beer production requires approval from the TTB. So it's not as open as people believe it is currently. So coming this week at the FDA, however, the thing they'll be focusing on is gathering evidence and hearing how we're manufacturing, and as well as the health implications for these compounds to see if they're safe. I don't personally believe that any action will come from this in terms of allowance for food products. The outgoing FDA commissioner, who I've also been speaking with, him and some other people prior to that, is that this is a fact-finding mission to find out what we're doing and what should be allowed, not to actually make recommendations. They're going to take this information and then pass it on to Congress, is my belief, and from talking to them. They'll make a framework for rules, but again, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act distinctly states that you cannot put anything that is a drug already in food. There's one catch. People believe that hemp seed has trace cannabinoids, and so that may be a way around the law. However, the problem is that the FD&C, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, clearly states that it must have been marketed for and not just contain the compound. People believe that hemp seed is an example of a compound that, or of a way that CBD is contained, that was marketed prior to Epidiolex being approved. However, the problem with that is that the there's been cases of it, such as the red yeast rice, which is something I'd recommend you look up for correlation of natural products to hemp. And because red yeast rice was basically it's a ancient remedy from Asia where basically they grow yeast on rice. And then because of that, it actually contains statins, which are blood pressure medications. And so because of that, people have used that in place of blood pressure medication, well, before we had medications for blood pressure. However, the problem is that when that was marketed, it wasn't marketed because it was a supplement. It wasn't marketed directly for that. People just bought it and used it for that, and they also never marketed it for the compound that was in it. They just marketed it as red yeast rice supplement. So because of that, a drug company eventually came along, figured out what that compound was, very similar to GW Pharmaceuticals, finding out that CBD was in and cannabis, and that was what's medical, and then the drug company got it approved by the FDA. Once the drug company got the red yeast rice extract approved, it then blocked all sale of red yeast rice that contained that compound. You would think, how could they do that if it was sold? Because it wasn't marketed for statin content. The law states that you can't just have a product contain something was sold before. It must have been marketed for that. So unless they were selling red yeast rice to stop blood pressure, stating that it contains statins and the exact compound, there's no grandfathering protection. And thus, the drug company, because they did do those studies, did identify the compound, is then able to have a complete control of that compound. And that's where we are with CBD. GW Pharmaceuticals did trials starting in 2005 for THC and CBD. Those trials, not unfortunately our grassroots activism, is why the Farm Bill happened. Those trials are why we know CBD is safe. As much as it pains me because I've been a medical patient since 2003, the reason we're having this discussion is GW Pharmaceuticals. And so the problem is that also then blocks the use of CBD in any food item because it's a drug already. So that's where we are with CBD, and that's why they're having this hearing, because the HHS, which is the parent agency at the cabinet level for the FDA, has the authority to make allowances for items like this. However, they've never exercised this discretion in the history of the FDA. So they're having this, that's why it's an incredibly historic hearing, because beyond just the fact that it's historic because it's cannabis, it's historic because the HHS has never held a hearing for a new ingredient to be added. Typically, what you'd have to do is, if it's a supplement, you'd have to get a new dietary ingredient application and you'd apply as a supplement. Or you would get generally regarded as safe or food additive status, which there's pathways for all those things. And my personal belief is that that's what the FDA is really going to do, is they're going to have this hearing and then they're going to direct all of us, go do that. And just like the commissioner of the FDA has been saying before he resigned, that it's actually going to require Congress's action, not just these hearings, because the FDA has authority to make rules. However, the law still states that you cannot add an item that's approved as a drug to a food. So until the Congress and the president sign a bill that alters that, we're kind of stuck where we are. And that's for CBD, for hemp terpenes, for anything other than seed or stalk. That's unfortunately the items that were allowed for food historically. And so because there's historic precedent, they allow those things. And so that's also, like, for example, I was mentioning, but I'm not sure if everyone heard, but the TTB, which is the alcohol board, they also handle tobacco, recently put out a circular announcing that any products that contain any alcoholic products that contain CBD or terpenes or any other hemp extract, aside from seed and stalk, will not be allowed in alcoholic formulations. So hemp terpene beer, not allowed. Hemp CBD beer, not allowed. And so until the FDA makes this clause that they're found as either a generally regarded safe status or a food amendment, or this rulemaking process gets done, which I honestly don't think is going to happen. They're going to make recommendations to the FDA, and then the FDA is going to then have to pass that on to Congress, and then Congress will be making these decisions. It's not going to happen in any kind of expedient manner for human food use. Meanwhile, you have all these states who are making their own rules. So that's played out that in New York right now, the health department has started embargoing food. They've taken a step back, and now they're saying they're going to wait until October. But even when that happens, in October, they will start be giving health code violations. They will be giving fines. The same thing's playing out in Los Angeles. LA County is doing the same thing. So it's not just places on the East Coast that are having these issues. And that's because most states' health laws and food laws default to the FDA law. And so because of that, we have these issues. California is working on a bill right now, and I believe New York is as well, to try and carve out exemptions similar to what cannabis is right now. Because as I said at the beginning, cannabis that has higher amounts of THC is illegal still. So pretty much any food use is in the same place, and we really just need Congress to resolve this. As much as we want these regulatory bodies to help us, we need Congress to pass laws because they have a lot more authority. Mitch McConnell, I'm not sure if anyone's from Kentucky, but hopefully someone is and can put pressure on him. He actually wants to improve some of these rules and fix some of these things. So that's the direction we're going. And then I work with Terpenes, and we're actually going to be focusing on some things besides CBD at this hearing, because most people aren't aware that hemp terpenes aren't allowed. So terpenes, if they're from hops, if they're from lavender, if they're from clove, those same ingredients would be considered food safe. They would be considered grass. Those same compounds, if you take that from the hemp plant, which produces them, it's instantly illegal for food use. That's surreal to think that taking it from one plant versus another changes its safety profile. There's already scientific data that shows those compounds are safe, and so there's no reason why the FDA, while dealing with this complex issue of CBD and THC, could start making allowances for hemp terpenes, could start making allowances for hemp leaf or hemp sprouted seeds for protein. Because another thing people don't know is that the hemp leaf actually contains more protein in it than the hemp seed. There's just a lot of food items that Congress is not ready to approve yet, and it's going to be an exciting time at the hearing this Friday.
Yeah. Cool. That was super informative. Thank you. Just no apologies. That was amazing. I guess just to clarify, so CBD topicals are okay because it's not a food additive, but anything that is orally ingestible is not okay under the FDA guidelines.
Well, technically, it's more of just that topicals, the FDA doesn't have any authority to recall them, but technically it's unapproved use of an approved drug, whether it's vaped or used topically, and they can call that and do that and stop it, but they don't have the authority to then recall it to stop you from selling it. It doesn't mean it's legal.
Got it. Any questions, Jason? What? What about for cosmetics? I'm assuming it's the
same thing. There's a reason why it's the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act.
Yeah, makes sense. Question?
Why does this not outlaw THC containing?
So,
what?
Why does this not outlaw THC containing products that also have to be CBD?
It does, because, so here's what it is. Prior to the Farm Bill, CBD was regulated mostly by the DEA because it was still considered a controlled substance. The moment it wasn't a controlled substance, it then became the purview of the USDA and the FDA, and now they're enforcing those laws. The moment THC isn't a controlled substance federally, the same thing will happen, and the same thing it'll kick down, and the FDA and the USDA will start regulating it. And if you look at the actual regulations on the FDA and their Q&A, it specifically mentions CBD and THC for this reason, and also that CBD and THC have both had medications and thus will be blocked for use in future food items.
But I can still go buy an edible.
Because those are still federally illegal products.
Sally wanted to jump in?
There's actually a good clarification.
That makes sense.
In California, where we've been mixing CBD and THC for years, our CBD products with THC in them are regulated under the Bureau of Cannabis Control. So they're actually part of their legal cannabis program in states with cannabis legal.
Exactly. It's state legal, but it's still federally illegal.
Yeah, it's federally legal, but one through the states are legal. So you can go to California all day long and buy 3-to-1, 1-to-1, 5-to-1. You can buy 20.
Oh, or Oregon, or Washington, or Colorado, or any state, or here in the medical program.
I think that's a sign we got to move in the direction of Sally. So I'm sure, are you going to be around for the after party as well? I think so, yeah. Okay, perfect. He's going to be around for the after party. I'm sure everyone has questions. I have questions. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. So we had a couple law firms. We had a couple accountants. We actually just partnered with MGO and LO to be our accountants, and connected with Noam afterwards, unfortunately. But hopefully going to be collaborating with them as well. I can say from personal experience, it is very important to get very good service providers, law firms, and accountants. Be sure to get them early in your company. It will set the foundation for later. And then also they are super, super knowledgeable about business and the industry more broadly. They have tons of contacts. So be sure to speak to all of the service providers that we mentioned. Marino on the PR side. Jordan, thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in, there he is, public relations, he's your guy. We got Lewis Chester, Aaron for anything insurance related. Be sure to check out Aaron's table. He is out there and in here somewhere. I cannot find him, but insurance, super important. And he just got a new partner for lower rates, so check him out. And obviously, Craig Zaffe for all your CBD needs, federally legal or otherwise. Craig is your guy. He's been with us for years at this point. Thank you, Craig, for your support. And then last but not least, we got our supporting sponsors, BDS Analytics. So if you're interested in data and what's going on in the legal markets around the country, BDS has tons of reports and insights, investor reports as well. Splash is what we run our events through. Tress Capital, if you're looking for either funding as an entrepreneur or support, they have a program as well. Cuddy and Feeder. Andrew is here somewhere. There he is. Andrew's right there. Great lawyer and going to be collaborating on some things in Westchester soon. And Herba Verde, Vincent and Anthony, there they are. So thank you guys all so much. Round of applause for all of our sponsors. Thank you. If you're interested in some of what we're doing elsewhere, we are in New York, we are in Los Angeles, we are in Connecticut, we are in Baltimore, we are in Philly, we are in DC, we're in a couple more places. So be sure to check out CannaGather.com for the latest. We have David from Baltimore who just kicked it off in Baltimore for his first one with over 100 people. So congrats, David. He also got these sweet pins. They're available for $10. So talk to him or talk to me. Thanks for coming up. So yeah, check out the calendar. And last but not least, let's give a big round of applause for our keynote speaker, Sally Nicholls. So, Sally, I've met you. Other people may not have met you. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're up to?
So first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming. It's really unusual that I got to talk about cannabis back in New York. So as president of a top 10 California cannabis brand, most of my activities in California or Nevada, where we've expanded to, or most recently, we're actually expanding to New York. And so the ability to talk to New Yorkers on my home turf is really unique. So thank you. First of all, I'm a New Yorker. I'm a seventh generation New Yorker, and New York is my home. I went out to California to go to USC for college, stayed there, went to graduate school at USC, went on to UCLA and did another graduate program, and really made California my home for 27 years. And it was really during that time that I, really embraced and was exposed to a completely different cultural idea and lifestyle that, most importantly was represented in Southern California, but I believe permeates the entire state. And so it was those 27 years there, and most importantly, 1996, when California passed its first medical use laws, medical cannabis laws, that I really started thinking to myself that, there really is something valid to cannabis being, having medicinal benefits. And as a college student there and living in California, I probably had more of a lifestyle experience with cannabis up until 1996, but through some other work that I was doing with a big Parkinson's Foundation, et cetera, I saw really up close how this plant was changing people's lives. So just first and foremost, I am a New Yorker. I was transplanted to California for 27 years. We had a family company called K-Swiss. It's a major shoe brand. It was, obviously we're in the brand building business, and it was, really like an amazing personal experience, seeing a completely different lifestyle. So fast forward to my introduction to cannabis, correct?
Yes.
So in 2012, K-Swiss as a family company was sold. And that gave us, as a family, the opportunity to try different things. And we, having slugged it out next to Nike and Adidas, et cetera, major lifestyle brands with hundreds of millions of dollars and incredible CPG businesses, it was an opportunity to kind of think to ourselves, all right, what are we going to do differently this time? During the time that we had K-Swiss, I also had several high-tech startups that I sold. One was exited to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and another was exited to Johnson & Johnson. And so there was this kind of confluence between having been in the startup world and having been inside kind of a major Wall Street type business. And so when we sold K-Swiss, I started thinking to myself, like, all right, what am I really good at? And I've been traditionally really good at building something out of nothing. And my business partner came to me and said, on the high-tech side, said, Sally, she's living in Colorado at the time, we have a small investment fund together. I just want you to know that if you don't, I'm going to invest in a cannabis company. I was floored. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're going to invest in a cannabis company? She said, yep. I'm just going to give you 2 weeks warning, but I'm going to write the check in 2 weeks, and you can come out and do some due diligence. So I hung up the phone. I thought, she's absolutely mad. And I thought about it, and 48 hours later, the phone call came again. Sally, I'm going to invest in a cannabis business. You now have less than 2 weeks to come and do due diligence, and I'm signing our name, and you will now be an investor in cannabis. So I went out to Colorado. Colorado was just a medical, medical market at that time. And it was truly like an eye-opening experience. Like, this is, I went through high tech where, you have this whole new industry that's created. I never thought it would exist again. And I was walking through, medical dispensaries in Colorado going like, it's happening again. We have a whole new industry that's starting all over, and this doesn't happen. Lightning doesn't strike twice. So we made the first investment. It was, and I'll be very candid, and the one thing I'll tell you is I will absolutely tell you the truth about everything, and if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. The very first investment we made was in Ebu. And Ebu was a Colorado company, and I thought, well, don't really know if they have a shot or not. Who the hell knows if they have a shot or not? But about 6 months ago, they sold for $420+ million. Not exactly what we were expecting, but certainly damn happy and proud. So it was really like I got into the cannabis business because ultimately, my business partner, Allison, said, I'm investing your money, pay attention. And so, nothing makes you pay attention like having your money on the line. You go to Vegas and you gamble and you care about your cards because you have money on the line. So all of a sudden I had money on the line and I paid attention, and I haven't looked back. I absolutely loved it. And shortly after that, I worked with another big brand in Colorado called The Farm, one of the best Colorado dispensaries up in Boulder. And then, the kind of trajectory happened from there. But, I want to be really honest about something. I was not, a massive weed enthusiast in college. Like, I was not a big cannabis smoker. I will say, as an adult, I've absolutely struggled with anxiety. I've struggled with depression from time to time. As a woman with 2 kids, I have issues with sleeping, and I have zero problems admitting that I use cannabis for all of those things. And I thank fucking God every day that the people that busted their ass to make sure these laws happened and that we could do this every day, that they did what they did. So that's
Thanks,
the
Dana.
short of it, right? That's the short of it.
This guy right there.
Yeah. So really, truly, I remember, we are all in this room because of decades of work and energy and tireless fighting that other people have done to make us look at this plant differently.
Yeah, Dana's been doing this since the 1500s. 1967?
Yeah.
End of 66. 66, 67. A long time.
Well, and I have to, so through the work I'm doing with Bloom Farms, one of our primary motivations when we built this company, we can get to that in a minute, was really about preserving California heritage for cannabis. And we're a California brand, so obviously our focus was on California and Humboldt County and, the families that have been doing this generationally and people that have gone to jail doing this and people that fight for it every day. And we've made decisions as a brand that have cost us money to do what we do and how we do it. We could have made far more money than we've made today. We could have made different decisions. But, every day I am keenly aware, and my entire team of the company of 75 to 80 people are, keenly aware that this only exists because of other people. and a lot of other work.
So interesting point about Ebu is basically, I think like right before it sold for like $400 million, they went back to their investors and were like, hey, we're not sure if we're going to make it, but we'll give you like 1-to-1 on your money. Like, do you want your money back? And like half the investors took it because they were like, okay, we've been dealing with this for like 4 years or something, 5 years. Like, okay, like we'll take our money back. And then like out of nowhere, they got an acquisition offer for like 10x. So kudos to you. So clearly you have a good spidey sense as an investor and also an operator. What you said that you sort of knew that something was going to work in cannabis when you went to do due diligence. What was that? Like, what did you feel or sense?
Well, I if I'm really honest, like I had no frigging clue if Ebu was going to succeed or not. I mean, I put money into Ebu to pay attention and to do my homework and to get inside the industry and to work my ass off. And I'll tell you right now, like I easily work 80 to 90 hour weeks on a light week. It's a really hard business. And in California, where it is wide open competition, it is black market, gray market, white market. It is regulations that aren't enforced. It is really just like a wild terrain. It's incredibly complicated and very difficult. So I don't claim that I had any particular insight about Ebu. To me, it's just get off the block and get learning and get in there and figure out, Sally, what is your take on the space? What is it? What matters to you? The very first company that I started, and this is kind of I am a serial entrepreneur if I'm candid about it, was a nonprofit, and we started it right out of college with 4 other college roommates, and our nonprofit was building environmental education for elementary students across California. And so I knew that I had to get into this space and figure out what my take on it was. I mean, I'm not kind of, I didn't go into it with a big plan. And I think that sometimes you're smart, but mostly you're lucky. So, Ebu is what Ebu was. I looked at it as an education and a degree. Shortly after that, we went back to our California roots, and we started looking at California brands in the California market. And I have an uncle who has very advanced Parkinson's, and I was working with Michael J. Fox's research foundation at the time, and really started seeing, what this could do for people. And we had the Israelis coming in and talking to us about, the role that cannabis could play for managing, those challenging symptoms. And when I went back to California is where I first encountered Bloom Farms, and then shortly after that, PAX, and shortly after that, another small delivery service called Sava. And I vote with my heart, and I use my dollars and my investment money to vote with my heart, and where I think the industry is going, should go, and what should be represented.
So I think you brought up the important point about the competition in California, and I think brand is super important, so we'll get back to that. But just very quickly, because I guess I have the insight, but it might not be clear to other people, like why do you mention PAX in the context of Bloom Farms for background on what Bloom Farms is and does?
Oh, okay. So first of all, I mentioned PAX because we were an early investor in PAX, and we were an investor in PAX as it related to its cannabis platform. First was Bloom, then was PAX. And subsequently after that, Bloom Farms became the first oil company to fill for the PAX era, which is the pod device that PAX created. And then we launched that product into the marketplace. So those two are actually 2 separate items. They happened independently of each other, but PAX is an example, I think, in many cases of another brand in the space. I think they're a platform play, and they represent their own thing. But one of the reasons that PAX ended up working with us is I think they were very keen on our 1-for-1 meal program, and the roots that we have inside, our CEO has inside California Cannabis, and we had and still do have great relationships down to retail, and we're really known in California for doing the right thing.
So there's a lot of different factors and variables that go into building a business and getting a competitive advantage, distribution partnerships like you had with PAX, but obviously like we're here to talk about brand. So like, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, ultimately, brand is the expression of of individual ideals on a corporate level. So ultimately, brand is who are you, what do you stand for, and how do you consistently deliver that? I mean, there's probably a lot more nuance to that and subtleties and science behind how that is accomplished. But if you date, brand back to the Egyptians, right? I mean, they started brand originally with livestock, and they're like, well, we're going to go out and we're going to literally brand our livestock so we know whose is who. I want to know this is mine versus someone else's. And then that brand became, eventually became a signal, a symbol of quality for that farmer's livestock. And so I think in many cases, brand is the same today. Who are you? What do you stand for? And how do you consistently deliver that? You can look at some of the things that I mean, everybody's wearing brands all over this room, right? Whether it's on your shoe, whether it's the, automobile you drive home or whatever, we all identify with something that stands for something else, whether it's quality, whether it's integrity, whether it's, hipness, or whether it's, esteem. But ultimately, and how brand plays out in cannabis, I think really depends on who you are as a company. But ultimately, brand is about, who are you, what do you stand for, and how do you consistently deliver that?
What's different between, a sneaker company versus a cannabis company or a CBD company for that matter?
Well, in some cases, there isn't much difference in the sense that the sneaker company has to know who they are and what they stand for. So, for example, Nike is about performance and just doing it, right? For cannabis, you have to really know who you are as a company and what do you stand for. So, in cannabis right now, I think brands mean something very different. And on the, I'm hoping not to offend people, but right now, brand in cannabis is about how much money I can make, and how much shelf space can I take, and how much greed and how much can I get for myself and my company? How fast can I grow? What is my multiple? That's not the kind of brand that we're building necessarily, but I think that being a responsible cannabis company really should mean a lot more than that. And we certainly work hard to have our own take on that.
So you're saying CannaGather shouldn't sell the pins? You think it's just a money grabbing? It's too obvious. So I guess like one question is like, it's pretty easy for K-Swiss or Nike or literally any company to go out and communicate to potential customers and the population at large about, hey, like we are so-and-so company, this is what we're doing. But obviously cannabis companies struggle because you can't put up Facebook ads, you can't put up Google ads. You can barely have an event like this without people being like, hey, like what are you doing? So like how do you see the challenges for cannabis companies in New York and also with your experience in California? Okay, well, so let's just start with the ways in which you can communicate your brand, right? And again, it goes back to knowing who you are. It takes a lot more to build a cannabis brand per se than it does another brand for a lot of legal challenges. But I think also the industry is really new. And the game is wide open. Like what really is a brand in cannabis? For us, for Bloom Farms, it's really about the quality of our product, the level of customer service, the level of transparency that we provide, the kind of partnership that we offer to our retailers. Really, how does that grow and change and evolve as the industry grows and changes and evolves? In 2018, we had a whole series of regulations that were handed to us, and some of those regulations I think made sense, and some of the other ones were real challenges. But at the end of the day, we consistently delivered on our promise of quality and dependability, and following building a compliant business and providing a trustworthy quality product. And it takes more to do that, and it takes more time.
So to talk about what we can and can't do, obviously we can't use television, and we have very limited means to communicate who we are. We can't use Facebook, to your point. But what we can do is make every single touch point along the way with our customers, our retailers, the regulators, the communities that we operate in, and the people that touch our product. I mean, that's really about providing an exceptional, trustworthy experience. And it's really one over one at a time.
Is there anything that you've done tactically through your time with Bloom Farms that you would you think was like particularly interesting, insightful, educational for you, or that people in the audience might learn from?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't, so it's really hard because at its core, Bloom Farms didn't sit down to say, how are we going to create a brand that people care about? We sat down and we said, what are things that really matter? You know, Mike Ray, who's the CEO of the company, said, listen, I grew up in Calaveras County. I grew up on a farm. I watched my friend's parents go to jail for cannabis. I watched the war on drugs fail. His origin for the brand came from what he believed in and what he did was right, which was very different than, let's create something that we think people are going to like. We're going to make it green versus yellow. So it's really the origin of it was very different. So I think what we did and what we continue to do is operate authentically and operate from a place where, you know, our goal is to do the best we can by everyone we come in contact with. Whether it's our one-for-one program where we provide a meal for a food insecure family for every single product purchased. That was an initiative that didn't come out of, let's do this to build our brand. It came out of, it's the right thing to do. I mean, Mike grew up in a neighborhood that had incredible food insecurity, and they were all farmers. So as, you know, what are we in now, May? Probably by the middle of June, we will have served 2 million meals to food insecure families across California. I mean, and that wasn't like a calculated plan where we sat down and said, what's going to read well with the audience? It was like, this came out of what Mike believed as a CEO and what he wanted to do, what made sense to him. You know, you know, something else I think that we did that again came from out of the necessity of the industry and what we felt was right is we created a pledge to source 50% of our product from female-owned or operated farms across the state. And thank you. Yeah. That was actually not easy to do. Yeah. But you know, we did that because as we went into regulation, we realized that some of our partners and some of the best farms and some of the best genetics were coming out of, you know, generational farms that were having a hard time getting through regulations and getting their licenses. I mean, we also had other initiatives that we did where we helped these farms get licenses, and we worked with them with regulators and things like that. And you know, we didn't do it because it you know made us money. We didn't do it because we put out a lengthy press release about it. We did it because it was the right thing to do. And so, you know, there's a different quality to working in an organization like that and building a brand like that than sitting around a coffee table, a conference room table going, okay, what's the next big thing? So-and-so did X, Y, and Z, and that worked. What should we do next? So the diversity initiative was about female-owned and operated farms. We've also done other things inside the company that we don't talk about regarding employment for people who've been incarcerated as a result of the drug war and mainstreaming them back into jobs inside of the cannabis industry and stuff like that. So we incubate two different social equity applicants up north, and we kind of do whatever we can. Ultimately, we're a startup also, so it's a lot harder to do that as a startup, but you got to it's one day at a time.
Awesome. And if you're interested in that last piece about transition from the prison industrial complex that we unfortunately live in to cannabis world and mainstream world, be sure to come back in July. We have some pretty exciting speakers that I'll announce soon. Any parting words for entrepreneurs or investors, for that matter, since you wear both hats in the room? You
really got to know who you are, and you got to know what matters if you're going to get into the space. You know, I mean, I see that there's money showing up every day. There are hedge fund bankers, new brands, people throwing, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars into California in the market. It's incredibly competitive. And ultimately, if you want to get into the cannabis business, you need to know what you're really good at and what really matters to you. And you need to translate that. In my ideal world, you translate that into the cannabis industry in a positive way. I mean, we're here to build a brand that is lasting, and I think that, you know, what we've done with Bloom Farms and doing it from the heart in an authentic way has definitely moved the needle from a regulatory standpoint, and what we've done down to retail. We could be 3 times the size we are now, but that's not, we're here for the long game. So if you're going to get into the business, you have to know it's really, really hard. It's very complicated. But most importantly, anyone getting into the space, I hope you bring a sense of commitment and ethics and a genuine interest in making the industry something bigger and better than it is now, and not just a new, quote unquote, economy to exploit. So those are my parting words.
That was cool. I know Polly has a question. Polly, would you like to ask your question?
Oh, let me think. Thank you so much. That was awesome. So you mentioned a little bit about sourcing 50% of your products from women. There's a lot of conversation in the industry right now that in the early days, although quite in the early days, there were a lot more women in leadership roles. Obviously, you're in a leadership role, but what's going on?
The question is about women in leadership roles in the industry.
So that's a complicated question. I'm going to start, for a lot of reasons, I'm going to start by answering the first part of it, which is what goes on inside Bloom Farms and why we did I think I kind of answered why we did the initiative we did. We started first with female-owned and operated farms because we looked at sun-grown farms and outdoor farms in California and really watched who was struggling the most and who we really needed a bolster to get through the regulatory process. And so we created the diversity initiative, and we've actually already surpassed 50% of our product being sourced by female-owned or operated farms. And that was something that we did that was externally facing, but there's a tremendous amount that we do internally facing that we don't talk about. So, for example, you know, Bloom Farms is more than 50% female from an employment standpoint. Many of the women that started with our company started as brand ambassadors or lower management, and we've moved them, you know, a trajectory right up to middle and upper management. So, for example, if I'm remembering correctly, in January, we did a round of promotions inside the company, and just in the sales and distribution division that I built and run, we did 11 promotions. All of them were internal. Of those 11, 7 were females. Those females started with us as brand ambassadors, and now they've moved up to being, you know, middle management. And frankly, like, you know, it's not just about your gender, right? I know we like to talk about the gender, but at the end of the day, these women that got promoted were outstanding, and they worked hard, and they brought their A game, and they translated their skills, and they really grew and evolved inside the business. So, and it is our commitment to continue to grow them inside the company and give them the tools they need to evolve as executives. So, you know, that's the kind of internal answer to the question. The external one is a little bit more complicated, and, you know, I think that, you know, I was a female in the early tech days, and there was definitely a time where I had a tremendous amount of opportunity to grow and change and evolve and have exposure. And I will say that some of it is just human nature. People like to work with people that they feel comfortable with. And I think that when you know, a lot of men came into high tech, they brought their friends and their friends' friends and whatever, and it just kind of evolved into, you know, we're going to bring in people that we know to do these jobs. And there wasn't a lot of awareness that you could actually really grow the people that you have inside the business and make them more powerful. I think there's another thing that I've noticed, and I really hope I don't offend people, but I am going to just speak honestly. You know, as an investor, I get pitched all day long. I get pitched business ideas all day long by male-driven businesses and female-driven businesses, and the male versus female pitch tends to be really different. The female pitch tends to be about how great the product is, how amazing the experience is, how important this is for culture and economy overall. And the male pitch, and this just, maybe it's gender-based, maybe it's education-based, maybe it's experience-based, I don't know the details enough, but the male answer is generally about, how am I going to grow shelf space? When is there going to be a return on your investment? It's really financially driven. And so, some of that dialogue, while women think in those same terms, taking that level of thinking from the bottom of the pitch and putting it to the top of the pitch, and I think will go a long way. And it's really just about reframing the things that you're talking about as an entrepreneur and putting them in terms that an investor wants to hear. If someone says, Sally, can you put $100,000 in my business? As an investor with $100,000, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, A, when am I going to get that back? And B, what's my multiple on that? I mean, this is just an investment game. I could invest that money in lots of other places. If you come to me and say, Sally, can you help me grow my business? I'm going to give you a different answer to that. I'm going to say, well, what's your use of funds on that money? And, how much are you going to be worth and, when that money is gone? And how are you applying that to actualize the idea? So part of the challenge with women in the cannabis business right now is, I think, a shift in dialogue. I think that all businesses have a responsibility, whether they're cannabis business or not, to look internally and hire from within, and really grow your intellectual capital. So another thing that Bloom Farms has done, like we have a close to zero attrition rate inside our company. People don't leave. We treat our people really well. We invest in their education. We create core values that resonate with everybody. And as a result, we have a highly, highly educated staff. And when people come into California, they try and poach our staff because they know that we have some of the best trained, knowledgeable people in the space, and they don't leave. They love what they do. So if companies think about growth and gender and all of these things, you get more balanced thinking inside a company, you get stronger intellectual capital inside a company, and ultimately I think you get a healthier ecosystem.
All right, Sal.
Did that answer your question? That's pretty comprehensive. We got a question here.
Being in California, obviously, it's the most competitive market for a lot of reasons: talent, money, technology. You mentioned that it's very hard for brands to advertise their needs. So how do you take a brand from being obviously very successful in California, but to be successful and make new niche?
So,
Question was, how do you succeed in California, a competitive market?
and how do you extend that past California, I think? So to answer the first part of your question is California is a grueling market. It's not a hard market, it is a grueling market. And people show up every single day and they give their product away to retailers and put it on shelves so that, here I am selling product in and I'm competing with someone who has just stocked the shelves with $5,000 worth of product that is free. So how do you build a brand in that environment? So, and how does that brand have relevance outside? For us, we build our brand by selling our product. We don't give away our product. And I think as a result, the brand means something more to people. We have our 1-for-1 program, which follows us into every single local market and national market that we go into. So for example, we have 7 food bank partners in California. All of those food bank partners participate in our 1-for-1 meal program. We opened up Nevada, towards the middle of last year. We have food bank partners in Nevada. And to be honest with you, when you do the right thing and you show up with authenticity and, you engage with the community and you stand for things that matter, people care, and the word of mouth spreads. We do the normal things, right, or what are considered the cannabis customary things, like, we have elaborate email lists that we use, and we have social media where we talk about what we use, meaning Instagram. Can't do anything on Facebook. We do events. We work hand in hand with our retailers. We work with our bud tenders. We do things like that to build brand. Press is a very big piece of our business, so we do talk about who we are and what we do, and we have a handful of press locations that are real champions of Bloom Farms. Rolling Stones is one of them, and they absolutely love who we are. Vogue is a huge supporter of us because of how we've grown women in the space. But I find that being good people and doing the right thing really helps build the brand for itself. In January, we launched a CBD line. And that's actually the division that I'm now president of. And I was really expecting to be starting this all over again, right? Building a brand and being in the CPG business, et cetera. But I have to say, like, I was very surprised when I called a couple of stores and said, hey, my name is Sally Nicholls. I work with Bloom Farms. We have a organically grown CBD line. I'd love to come and talk to you about it. And they were like, Bloom Farms? Oh, we totally know who you are. I really didn't. I was really shocked and really happy at the reception that we received and how many people knew who we were. So to build a brand nationally, I think, and I think this is a little bit the terpene conversation that was happening before, you got to get out from under the federal regulation of THC. We have a huge demand for our products in Europe, again, because of the brand and the California lifestyle and things like that. But most importantly, authenticity builds your brand, and it is really brick by brick, and it's a much slower process. You could throw money at it, but I don't think it has lasting impact. And so we do it by onesies and twosies every day, all day.
So one more question.
As I love the story where it says 1 + 1 back, I love that. In your opinion, how important is branding when it comes to graphics and how you kind of explain what you're about? Because this clearly says transparency, you care, premium, and sophisticated. I mean, it says all that. So, what was the whole process when you started this graphics?
He's a 15-year brand and marketing and packaging veteran who really likes your product. He's wondering, what is your thought process when you go into design packaging in the context of branding?
Well, so for us, and I may have said this earlier, branding happens at every single stage of the company, right? Every single touch point, whether it's the person you're talking to on the phone, whether it's the product that you pick up in your hand, whether it's the website that you touch, every single element is really about a hello with the customer. So one of the first things I loved about Bloom Farms was the attention to packaging. And Mike Ray said, listen, I'm here to, I want to change, I want to start changing the conversation about cannabis. And I think the first way to do that is to create packaging that communicates trustworthiness, consistency, dependability, and integrity. So our very first line of packaging that came out on the cannabis side came out in there were three different SKUs: daytime, nighttime, anytime. And it was back in 2014, 15, and the real goal of that was to tell people how to use the product and to know that if you use this product at daytime, you're going to feel a little bit more of an uplifting experience. It was a sativa. If you're going to use a product at nighttime and you want to go to sleep, this product is an indica, and it's going to help you go to sleep. And then anytime is kind of, anytime. So from the very beginning, for us, as a brand, using packaging to communicate the values of the company, the opportunity of cannabis, different ways to use cannabis was critical. It is our newspaper every day. So the product that you're referring to is the CBD product. And it's interesting that you said that, because one of the challenges that I've struggled with Bloom Farms in a CPG market now with a CBD product is that, that package could essentially sit on a shelf next to a pharmaceutical product. And while our product is, USDA certified organic and super clean, it has 2 ingredients and all the other things that we do about local farms and our own strains, blah, 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 blah. Who's going to pick that product up? Are they going to pick up that one, or are they going to pick up the one that looks like a pharmaceutical grade product? And so it's an interesting kind of moment that we're at in time. And the terpene discussion earlier was talking about, trust and terpenes from FDA regulation and pharmaceutical grade, blah, blah, blah. What communicates trust to the new consumer when it comes to cannabis? Is it going to be something that looks like everything we've been consuming forever? Is it going to look like something we find in CVS that is a white labeled version of something that's sitting on everybody else's shelf? Or will consumers resonate with authenticity and honesty and something different? I don't have the answer to it yet, but I'm certainly really happy. Thank you, and I appreciate that, because we labor over these questions internally. So thank you.
One last question: are you coming at the after party?
Yes.
Okay.
Pizza served.
Sallyann Nicholls, everyone. Thank you so much. Boom farts.